Welcome to The Magic of Positive Thinking, a podcast hosted by Norb Savannasini, founder of AmericanEagle.com, and writer Al Edwards. Norb, you're looking terrific in that shirt today. You look really great.
Oh, thank you. It's a baby blue shirt.
Baby blue.
Yeah, it makes me feel younger. You know?
That's right.
It's a beautiful day today. It's raining and the trees are changing and God, what a gift, what a present we get every day. You know, it's just beautiful. And we needed the rain, and it's cool, and it's just really a great day.
You know what? I truly enjoy all four seasons, and I think we all should, because people talk about, winter and everything. Yes, it's hard, but each season really has its own beauty if we only stop and enjoy it.
Yeah, I happen to be someone who came to this country when I was 11 years old, and I had never seen snow before.
Wow.
And I was sitting in the classroom in Bloomington, Indiana. I was 7th grade, I remember this, and I saw snow falling for the first time in my life. And the teacher, who was a really, really great lady by the name of Rucker, I remember that, she said, "Have you ever seen snow before?" And I said, "No." And she said, "Would you like to go to the window and watch it?"
Wow.
And I did. I said, "Yes." And I went to the window, and I was fascinated by this thing that I had never seen before. And to this day, I like snow. And it goes back to familiarity breeds contempt. You know, I never saw it, so I wasn't familiar with it. And I fell in love with snow, and I still love snow. And I don't like to shovel it and all that, but when it falls, it's just beautiful. And I have a grandson who's now in his 30s, but he was walking with me when he was like 6 or 7 years old, and we were watching the snow just fall lightly, and it was on every branch of every tree, and it just looked beautiful. And a 6-year-old kid or 7, and he said, this is like if God just painted this.
Yeah, wow.
Isn't that beautiful?
What a beautiful story about your teacher. I never heard that story before. That's amazing.
I have a few that I don't tell you.
You're still holding back on me? Yeah. I used to look out the window all the time in school also, but it wasn't because of that. It's just because I was bored out of my mind and couldn't pay attention. But that probably said a lot, foretold the future for sure. So, well, friends, it's great to be back with you again today. And, when Norb and I put these shows together, we really try and come up with some kind of creative, different ways of looking at things. And, all of us, I bet, who's listening to this podcast has purchased something on Amazon. I find Amazon to be wonderful. It's very convenient. They seem to have everything. But, believe it or not, Amazon did not invent that business model. There was an old company that most of you have heard of, and that was called Sears, or Sears and Roebuck originally. And we want to talk about the incredible power and influence Sears had on American society, and how ultimately, believe it or not, Sears collapsed and failed in a catastrophic way, and what we can learn from that as for our own lives. So that's kind of the topic of the show today, is what Sears's just dynamic rise and fall can mean to our own lives.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it applies to all of us. And I like every time we do this show, I actually look for quotes. And this is one that applies to this, what we're going to talk about today. It says, "Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change, and success requires the ability to adjust to new circumstances." Quotes emphasize adaptability as a key to survival, as seen in phrases like adapt or perish. And the idea that life is about waiting for the storm to pass is not true. It's about learning how to dance in the rain.
Wow.
The ability to change, or the lack thereof, can define success and failure. And all failure is the failure to adapt. All success is successful adaptation.
Wow. Oh my gosh. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that.
And the interesting thing about Sears is that, Sears was a company that actually started in Chicago by a guy by the name of Sears, and he sold watches.
Yep.
Basically, he sold watches for railroad people.
Mail order.
Yeah, mail order. And then he had a friend by the name of Roebuck, and they started this company called Sears and Roebuck. And I don't know if any one of you, or I'm sure some of you have, if you're a little older, but if you've ever seen a Sears catalog, it was just one of those most incredible, wonderful things you could ever imagine. I still have one. And sometimes I look at it and I'm amazed at the stuff that Sears sold. Sears sold houses. In fact, I have a grandson that lives in Milwaukee that actually has one of those houses.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, he has a Sears.
He has a Sears house? I never knew that.
Yeah, wow. There's a whole neighborhood in Shorewood, which is an area of Wisconsin, Milwaukee, and they have a lot of those houses.
How about that?
And it's a beautiful house, and it was really well built. Sears would ship you the whole house, and you built it. And a lot of people did that.
Things were numbered. All the parts were numbered.
Yeah, and I grew up in a small town in Indiana, and Sears didn't have a store, but they had a catalog store, which was a very little shop.
Right.
And you'd go in there if you wanted to. You could actually phone the order in, but a lot of people went in there and they opened the catalog in front of a representative, and then they picked what they wanted. And in a couple of days, whatever item you asked for was there. I mean, and the most amazing thing about Sears is that they were Amazon. They could have changed their name to Amazon or anything, and they could have been Amazon, but they couldn't adapt to change. And I have a very personal experience with Sears, because when we started the internet business, I called Sears many, many, many times to try to convince them to, put the catalog on the internet.
Oh my God, you've got to be kidding me. No, I didn't know that.
No, yeah. And I failed, obviously. And because the guy on the phone kept thinking, well, how is it going to work? Blah, 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 blah. And you can't explain the internet when it first started on the phone, and they had such a rigid idea on how to sell that they could not see this incredible method. But they had it all. They had the transportation, the everything. It's one of the biggest companies, and it was worldwide. I mean, they had Sears stores all over the place. So, yeah, the ability to adapt is very, very important.
Yeah. I have a friend who's also a great antique car enthusiast. He has and I've ridden in it actually. He has a 1909 Sears motor buggy that cost $350 at the time. A Model T in 1909 was about $850, so the quality wasn't so good. But you could also buy a car, which, by the way, I'll mention something in a minute. And this company, AmericanEagle.com, also, I talk about this all the time, thrives and survives today because it changed with the world. But before we get into all that, let's go back a little bit into the history and give you some context of what we're talking about. By the way, I bought recently a 1963 fall 63 Sears catalog on eBay, and I have it sitting in my office in Lisle, in our Lisle office. And at lunchtime, I look at it. It's 800 pages long, and I mean everything. It's Amazon. It's Amazon. So let's go back and talk about this. As Norb said, in 1892, Richard Sears and a name named Alva Roebuck started Sears Roebuck as a mail-order watch company. Its catalog, nicknamed eventually the Consumer's Bible, connected rural Americans with affordable goods. It empowered rural America to modernize from clothing and tools to prefabricated houses. Sears raised living standards and broadened access to modern conveniences. It noticed with great perspective and innovation that people starting moving to the cities and elsewhere, that stores would work well in 1925. So they started the stores. It became one of the largest employers and retailers of the 20th century, shaping consumer behavior and middle-class life. Even after its decline, Sears' model of accessibility, distribution, and affordability laid the groundwork for modern retail. It all happened here, and I'm so proud to say today still that for 25 years we had the tallest building in the world, and it was the Sears Tower.
Yeah, we did for a long time.
Yeah, and I still call it. I refuse to call it whatever.
Oh yeah,
it is
no,
now.
so do I.
It will always be. It will always be Comiskey Park. And
I can't think why people would change the name of a building once it's built. You know, it's like changing the name of a person after they're grown. It's ridiculous.
This was Fred, but now he's Henry because he's 18.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing about Sears too is that not only was it Sears, but then there were a couple of companies in Chicago that were also huge that competed against Sears, Montgomery Ward and Spiegel, all Chicago-based. And Chicago, for people that are not aware of this, had at one time, and I don't know if it's still true or not, but the structure is still there. And it's actually over an expressway. It's so big. And it had the largest post office in the world just to handle the Sears catalog and Montgomery Ward catalog distribution.
Now you're talking about the post office over 290, right? Over the bridge there, leaving downtown?
Yeah.
That was connected to Sears? I didn't know.
Well, no. The post office built it to handle
to accommodate
traffic.
Sears.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was so big. I mean, these catalogs must have weighed, what, 5, 7, 6 pounds?
Oh, yeah, they're heavy.
Yeah, right. So... You know, I feel sorry for the postmen because they had to actually carry all these things, but no, it's just it also applies to your life. You know, we're all giving this gift, and if we meet something, we say, "Oh my God, I can't cope with this." No, you have to cope with it because.
Right.
If you don't cope with it, I mean, obviously what's going to happen is that you're not going to be happy and you're not going to succeed in life. And Sears is, I think it's one of the biggest tragedies in business history because they just could not change. They couldn't adapt to something that now would take about 5 minutes to convince them to do it because everybody knows about the internet. They didn't know about the internet and they weren't capable of adapting. And here's this guy, by the name of Bezos, who, I don't know if he worked for a New York investment firm or something, but he thought that the internet, he could sell books on the internet.
Yeah. Amazon started as a bookseller. I don't know if everyone knows that.
And all of a sudden, and you have other companies like Barnes & Noble and other booksellers that they didn't see it either. But this guy that didn't know anything about books or selling anything, he saw the internet. So he saw the way to get in there and sell merchandise.
Exactly.
Which is, this is what, and today, whoever's listening to us, everybody's talking about artificial intelligence. Well, to be truthful with you, it's just on its infancy. Right. It's just, there's more probably misleading things about artificial intelligence than reality, but it's here and it is going to improve. It's going to be like the internet.
Right.
I mean, this is the worst that artificial intelligence is going to be. From now on, it's just going to keep growing and growing and growing.
I like that.
I mean, China's developing factories that have very, very few people. It's all robotic and it's all handled by decisions made by artificial intelligence. Their production is just incredible what's happening. And believe it or not, the average person has more money because of the efficiency with this. So they're adapting to this instead of being fearful of it and saying, oh my God, this is going to, eliminate jobs. There's one thing that is a fact is that every new invention creates new jobs. We must remember that when Edison discovered the light bulb, the biggest business in this country was candle making, and they went to Congress to stop the light bulb because it was going to eliminate all these jobs.
To outlaw.
To outlaw.
Light bulbs.
Light bulbs, yeah. So there's always fear. But, if you look at things positively, say, oh, my God, what an opportunity. I want to learn about this. Because, listen to this. This is really interesting. Nobody really knows about AI. So you are able to make it as good as anybody else.
Right.
You just have to think of ways to use it, and it's not that hard.
Tremendous opportunity.
Yeah.
Years ago, again, friends, depending upon how old you are, we just really want to try and emphasize the enormous impact to everyone's daily life in this country that Sears had. And Norb talking about adapting, and that's kind of actually how we're leaning into how this affects our own lives. But, I live in this little town called Sandwich, Illinois. I think everyone knows that. It's a great place at lunchtime too, by the way, Sandwich. And
they're free.
They're free, yeah. And I know everyone's laughing at my joke out there in podcast land. But anyway, I saw a picture taken about 1905, 1910. And it was a wagon maker in Sandwich. This is an actual picture of a business in Sandwich. And they make wooden wagons. There's 3 guys outside. It must have been lunchtime. And they're wearing their bowlers and their overalls. And they're smoking their cigars and everything. And I have this image in my mind of what happened one day. And they're sitting there in their wagon business. Very successful business. Been in business 35 years. They're out there smoking their cigars. And all of a sudden, one day, they hear this sound coming down the street. And it sounds something like this. Now, friends, that is my imitation of a 1910 Model T coming down the road. And they see this car coming down the road, and they think, oh, my God, our lives are over. Well, look at this car. So I always say, what should those people do? And many of them did. They continued making wagons as long as wagons were still needed. But they also bought a Ford dealership. And that's the best of both worlds. You have to adapt.
Yeah. And that's a really, really interesting lesson because there were a lot of wagon makers, I'm sure, that did not go
right
and buy a Ford or a Chevy dealership or
right.
Dodge at that time, because they couldn't foresee, the future. And there's actually an interesting movie that was made, I don't know, maybe before, it is a silent movie, but it's a story of automobiles and how people fought it. And they even had races between horses and cars. And at that time, the horse would beat a car or going around. But the amazing part is that at the end of the race, nobody went to look at the horse.
They went
to see the car.
Well, as you know, I own a Model T, a 1926 Model T, and I take great pleasure driving it. And I always tell people, it's the most fun you'll ever have going 27 miles an hour.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's amazing when you think the revolution that caused, And can you imagine, having a horse to take care of? I mean, people have dogs and cats, and you have to take those animals to the vet and stuff. And
feed them and clean up after.
When a horse gets sick, you can't take the animal to the vet. The vet's got to come to you. And
right.
There's a joke about people that have a little bit of money. If you ever want to go broke, get into the horse business, because they really, really cost a lot of money.
Run you dry, yeah.
But no, it's adaptation is very, very important. And I have a quote by Teddy Roosevelt. He says, "There can be no life without change, and to be afraid of what is different or unfamiliar is to be afraid of life."
Wow.
And I think this is...
those are incredible quotes today.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting. Everybody knows I love to look at these quotes, and we have a rough idea of what we want to talk about. And some of these quotes are incredible. Now, a lot of people never heard of Albert Schweitzer, unluckily, but there were two great minds of the 20th century. One of them was Einstein, and the other one was Albert Schweitzer, who was a doctor that devoted his whole life to practice medicine in Africa and try to improve the life of Africans.
Both named Albert.
Both, yeah. And this is what he said. Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success.
Jeez.
If you love what you're doing, you will be successful. And the simplicity of that it's incredible. And I want to let you talk about that because I have some interesting stuff too.
Absolutely. Well, what I was going to say about Henry Ford, as much as he literally changed the world, and we talk about Henry Ford a lot, but he also had a fatal flaw that many people don't know about, and that is that he could not see. They sold 15 million Model Ts. Try and get your mind around that, okay? 15 million Model Ts. In the mid-1920s, 50%, one out of every two cars on the road was a Model T. How'd you like that for market share, you business folks out there?
Yeah.
But by the end of the Model T's run, Henry Ford could not see that the Model T had run its course. He thought if he was still alive today, Ford would still be making the Model T. And it was his son, Edsel, the famous name Edsel, which we should also do a show on, said, Dad, we need to change because everyone's eating our lunch now who've caught up with us and surpassed us. And if we don't come out with a new car, we're going to go out of business. And the next year, they shut the plant down, retooled it. And the next year, they came out with the Model A. And that decision saved Ford. So the incredible vision and literally a man who changed the world, Henry Ford, could not also see that the car's time had come.
Yeah, and this is why it's so important, too, about listening to other people, because there's no one that has all the answers. Nobody. And it's always good to surround yourself with people that you trust and are positive-minded, because those kind of people, are positive for a reason, because they're successful. What's interesting, we never talked about this, but, when you think about it, positive people are successful people. They're happy, and this is the only country that actually says in our Constitution, or actually Declaration of Independence, in the pursuit of happiness.
Right.
Which nobody had ever done that before in the history of the world, ladies and gentlemen, which is very important. Really, really interesting stuff. Yeah.
I love that. Well, before we go further into some of the stuff you want to talk, I just want to summarize what happened to Sears. So it's failure to adapt, struggled to keep pace with changing shopping trends, from malls to obviously the internet. It was outpaced by its competitors. Walmart, Target, and Amazon offered lower prices and better convenience. It had strategic mismanagement, and it neglected its core strengths. And I'm going to talk about that again when we talk about applying it to our own lives. Iconic brands were underfunded or sold off, eroding customer loyalty. And I want to talk one more moment about our own company, AmericanEagle.com. I tell people this all the time. For those of you who do not know a lot about our history, we started out as a computer, American Eagle Computer Products, that was a game distributor for educational video games. Nord bought this company. It was called Phoenix Software. There was a dispute with the name, so being a great, proud American immigrant, he named the company American Eagle Computer Products. The game business was successful for a long time, and then in the 1980s, computers were starting to come into offices. So American Eagle started getting in the business of selling computers and crawling under tables and plugging them into each other all around offices. And then in the early 1990s, one of our customers came to us and said, hey, you're our computer people. We need one of these website things. And we just celebrated this year 30 years of building websites. We were at the dawn of the internet. My whole point in telling people this story is I get excited about, as you know, we changed with the world. And that's why American Eagle not only survives, but thrives, because we changed with the world.
Well, yeah, and right now we talked about artificial intelligence, and it's changing, and we are very deep into trying to learn how to use it effectively for our customers, and actually see if we can
for ourselves
discover some software that a lot of people can use. But it is interesting that you have to adapt in life. I mean, my grandparents, who were born in the 1800s, they didn't have running water in their home. They didn't have electricity. They actually, my grandmother actually insisted on going to a new neighborhood outside of Buenos Aires proper, and she had 2 daughters and 2 sons, and they couldn't believe they were moving to a place where the electricity still wasn't there. So I imagine they had candles, and it's kind of interesting that they adapted to that. And my grandfather and grandmother never owned a car. They never owned a car because I don't know. He probably knew how to ride a horse. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know, but
right.
But here's an interesting one. We talk about. A friend of mine just sent me this. He did a study about immigrants, and being one, I can share some of these ideas because I probably know a little bit about this. But this is an interesting study. Immigrants play a very large role in founding and growing new businesses in this country.
Mm-hmm.
Immigrants are 80% more likely to start a business than native-born Americans. According to MIT research analyzing over 1 million firms founded between 2005 and 2010. They account for over 20% of new businesses founders, despite compromising only 14% of the U.S. population. In high-growth sectors like tech and AI, immigrants founders represent up to 40% of new ventures. Job creation and economic impact. Immigrant-founded firms tend to employ more people on average than those started by native-born entrepreneurs. These businesses are responsible for a significant share of new creation, especially in our companies. And, there's a lot of facts which are really interesting. And I kept thinking, why is this? Why is it? Well, it goes back to one of Al's favorite statements.
I was just thinking this.
Familiarity breeds contempt. Americans don't appreciate what they have. Here's an immigrant. I was only 11 when I came here, so I feel myself that I'm very American, but I still knew what it means to be from another country. But Americans have all this, they take it for granted. But here comes this guy from another country who has seen American movies all his life. And they're positive. They're positive. And they don't know about the problems that America has. They don't know, because whatever problems America has, they're a lot less than what they left from.
Yeah.
So there's a positive situation in their mind where they say, oh my God, I couldn't do this in my country, but I can do it here. And I have a lot of friends that are foreign born, and they're all very successful people. I mean, I don't care if they're in plumbing. I mean, we have a gentleman here that's from Mexico that does all the landscaping here. And this guy's got more equipment than some countries, I mean, it's incredible. And this is not an educated guy or anything. He's just a hardworking guy. His wife is the bookkeeper, and his sons work with him, and they do landscaping. And one American goes and says, I'm going to do landscaping. Well, the possibilities are there. I mean, there's no difference whether a Mexican or an American most, or a Greek or Italian or whatever the heck, It's just the idea that, my God, here's this country where I've got this. So the attitude, that attitude that, yes, I can do it here.
Right. And the green, for this gentleman, the landscaper, the grass was not the only green accumulating, was it? It was money too.
Well, it's also green.
That's green too.
A different kind of green.
Different kind of green. Well, friends, in our last minute, let's wrap this up by saying, how can we apply the lesson, the catastrophic rise and fall of Sears to our own lives? And we've talked a lot about it. Adapt to the changing world. Flexibility and openness to change are essential to long-term success. Don't neglect your strengths. Just like Sears sold off some of their key brands to make, to raise cash, keep developing your core talents and values. They are your foundation. Consistently invest in yourself through learning and self-growth. The importance of vision, having a clear direction in life, ensures steady progress. Integrity, reputation, and trust matter. They're assets you can't afford to lose. And finally, resilience after setbacks. Even giants can fail, but failures can become powerful lessons. And as our old friend Judge Caprio said that we did our last show on, which you'll hear soon, it's not a sin to get knocked down. It's a sin to not get back up.
That's the thing. And learn how to dance in the rain.
I love it.
Yeah.
Norb, you are a national treasure, my friend.
Well, I don't know if that's true, but it's a blessing to be able to really squeeze the joy out of life, and by being positive, you can do that. And just be positive. Quit, don't associate with negative people. Run away from them. Just run away from them and be happy you're living in this country that offers so much opportunity. That's unbelievable. I mean, to get a lawnmower, start cutting grass, and pretty soon you have machinery like this guy has,
Unbelievable. When I was one last thing, when I was 16, I said to you, Norb, you're more American than Americans born here. You're a greater American than the people like me who was born here. And I think even at that very tender age, I had this sense that the immigrant story of America is what has made this country great.
Yeah, well, I mean, I came to this country and all you saw was cowboy movies where Americans were great. They expanded into the West, and everybody was happy, and there was comedy. What other country has produced movies with comedy? I mean, God, for today, I don't see many in this country, but when you think about our history and that, we should do a show on that.
Yeah, we'll do that sometime.
Okay.
Well, friends, we hope you enjoyed our show. Please listen to it multiple times to kind of absorb it. We always give you a lot of value for your dollar on this show. But Norb, thank you so much, my wonderful friend. And
God bless.
For Norb Savanastini, this is Al Edwards, and we will see you next time. Thank you.